Welcome to Front Porch Friday and our series, You Might Be a Foolish Woman If. You know what? I felt like a foolish woman the other day. I decided to save the $20 or $25 and give myself a pedicure. I was home alone all by myself. I propped myself up on the ledge of my bathtub and I proceeded to give myself a pedicure. A few minutes later, I found myself in the middle of the floor, of the tile floor. I had lost my balance and fallen off the ledge of that thing. Somehow or another twisted myself up where I had hit my head on the tile. I had almost cracked my skull and a big old giant bump was just rising up. I went in and got me an ice bag and I sat there with that ice pack on my head and I thought, what a foolish thing that was for me to do, to give myself a pedicure, and how embarrassing it would be to be found in the middle of the floor. You had died from giving yourself a pedicure, okay? I could have cracked my skull. And I thought I'd lay here all by myself. What an embarrassing and unexpected way to die. You know, that reminded me of foolish woman number 3, and we're going to talk about her today. She is a woman who didn't give herself a pedicure, okay? But she's a woman who does not think about the consequences. She does not think about the future. She does not think that any moment her life could come to an end, an accident, a diagnosis, something unexpected, like I had happened to me on the edge of my tub just a few days ago. Listen, girls, we have to remember every day, today may be our last, and so we want to be ready. We want to be ready to meet the Lord. And foolish woman number 3, listen, she's nowhere near ready. We're going to find out about her in Luke chapter 12 as Jesus begins to share a parable. And this parable is about greed, okay? Covetousness. Jesus says in Luke 12:15, then he said, beware, okay? Beware of what? He says, guard against every kind of greed. Girls, there's lots of different forms of greed, aren't there? Just think about there's lots of different ways you can be greedy. You can covet somebody's job. You can covet somebody's things, their home, their car, their husband, their things. You can covet things that you see you can want it, and all of a sudden your mind is just attached to how can I get that? What do I have to do to achieve that? Girls, covetousness has many, many forms, and he says be on guard against every form of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own, he says. Then he told them a story to illustrate this. He said, a rich man, but girls, this could just as easily have been a rich woman, had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. And so life is good for this rich man. He's living large. His crops are producing well. And life is just really, really good. In verse 17, he says, what do? I don't have room for all of my crops. His only problem that he really had was that he just had so much he didn't know what to do with it. It's kind of like in America. Have you noticed the burgeoning business of storage facilities in our country? They are everywhere. People are paying rent month by month. I've had to do it in the past myself because I don't have enough room for all of my stuff. Girls, it is just an evidence of our greedy society is really what it is. And so he says, well, I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger ones. Then I'll have room to store all my wheat and other goods. And then I'll sit back and I'll say to myself this, my friend, you've stored away enough for the years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. Listen, he is so successful. He thinks he's got all that he needs or ever wanted. But there's just one problem. It's his last day on earth. And he's not ready. He's not prepared to die. And in verse 20, God says to this man, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything that you've worked for? Yes, a person, Jesus said, is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. And so, girls, listen, you might be a foolish woman if you are a material success, but a spiritual failure, okay? You're rich according to the world. You're rich according to your own definition and standards. And listen, in America, we are a rich nation indeed. All of us are rich. All of us have far more than most people do on the face of this earth. But material success has become the god of this world, and greed, not God, has become its goal. It's all about me, my success, my bank account, my possessions, the things in my closet, the things in my garage, all the things that I can achieve in my life. It's me, 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 me. It's greed, 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 greed. And it is something that Jesus says, beware and be on guard against every form of this type of greed. And so these were Jesus' warnings, and these are his 2 warnings for you and me today, so that we won't be foolish woman number 3. In verse 15, beware and be on guard against every form of greed. So I got to ask you, what is it that you're susceptible to when it comes to greed, okay? Is it money? Is it shoes? Is it purses? Is it shopping? Is it a house? Is it bigger property? Is it a bigger car? Is it a better position at your job? What is it that you set your mind on, that you just began to think on, and that you just began to kind of obsess over, and it becomes something that just becomes an obsession for you, that it turns into such a greed, and that it just almost, it obsesses and possesses you? What is that? He says, be on guard against every form of greed. And so you have to recognize in your own life, where are you susceptible to greed? And then secondly, the warning is this: don't be anxious, he says in verse 22, for your life, for your clothing, for your material needs, for life's essentials. He says, stop worrying about all that. Stop making that your focus. Stop making that your goal, all the stuff you need and you want. He says, don't be anxious. Don't spend time worrying about all of that stuff. He gives us 2 warnings, and those are the 2 warnings, and then he gives us 2 instructions. He says this in verse 31 in Luke 12. He says, seek him first. Seek God first. Seek God's kingdom. Seek God's righteousness first. And then he goes on to see, and when you do that, he'll take care of your every need. Have you seen him do that in your life? I can certainly say he's done that in my life. And listen, he will provide for all of our needs. Now, not all of our greeds, of course, but if we'll seek him first, we will see that he is true to his promise to provide for every need that we have. That's his first instruction. His second instruction is this. He says, lay up treasures in heaven. What he's saying is give. Spend your money wisely. Give your money to God's work. Give your money to charities, to ministries, to missions, to those who need it, to the poor, to the orphans, to the widows. Give your money away. He's saying, lay up treasures in heaven. Take what God has given you and give back to him, and put it away in heaven, in a sense, so that you won't just be investing it in stuff that will not last. He is saying, lay up treasures in heaven. Be a giver. Only a fool, girls, listen, focuses solely on today and the treasures of this earth. Only a fool seeks earthly success alone. And only a fool forgets that one little slip, one little fall, one little accident, one little diagnosis perhaps, that's all it takes. And this life can be over that fast. So, be a wise woman. Seek to be a spiritual success, okay? Be on guard against greed in all of its forms. Don't be anxious for tomorrow. Seek him first. And today, say, Lord, how can I lay up treasures today in heaven, okay? Do that for me this week. Do that for the Lord this week. And listen, you'll find yourself becoming a wise woman and a spiritual success. Well, I'd love to hear your comments, love to hear for your testimonies on the blog or the Facebook page or YouTube. Let me know, what are some of the things that kind of pull and tug at you as far as covetousness goes? And I'd especially love to hear, how have you seen God meet your needs? How has he provided for you in a supernatural way when you have given him first place in your life? Well, thanks so much for sitting here on the porch with me. I'll be right here, back here again next week, and we'll talk about foolish woman number 4. But until then, if you're a wise woman, seek him first. And if you're a woman who's 50 and over like I am, honey, pay for a pedicure, okay? It might just save your life. I'll see you next week right here on Front Porch Friday. Bye, girl.